This is At the Extremes.
Beloveds, welcome back to At the Extremes, the podcast where we discuss the extremes in our society and how we got here. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Greg.
And I'm Serge.
It's Judy.
Heck yeah.
And today we're going to be talking about the week that was.
It's a full house.
Yeah, you kidding me right now? It's a full garage. Before we get into that, though...
You mean recording studio?
Yeah. I got blankets up now.
Soundproofed.
Try to make this room as small as I can. But no, so before we get into that, though, Judy, how about you hit us with a silver lining to start us?
Oh, man. Well, it's been a work-free weekend, and I have highly enjoyed myself. I took your mom to the farmer's market yesterday for her birthday. So happy birthday to your mom.
Happy birthday to your
Happy
mom.
birthday.
We had a
Happy
nice...
60th, Mom.
Yeah, we had a nice time.
She listens to the show, so...
She does.
Heck yeah, big ups.
Big ups to Mom.
And then went out and did some early birthday celebrating last evening.
With some friends, yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Do you do like the birthday month where just you throw tantrums every time that
I haven't.
that you don't get your way?
No, not this year.
It's my birthday month.
I know somebody who does that.
Yeah, because somebody deserves an entire month.
Well, that's an interesting question because my birthday's at the end of the month, so I clearly could probably pull the birthday card.
Hey, you come in.
And in my heart, I do, but like out loud, probably not. But somebody
Out
else,
loud, probably not.
somebody else in the room has a very early birthday that occurs like right at the beginning of the
it gets
month.
forgotten about by fucking Christmas.
My final portion of my silver lining.
Yeah, go for it.
We played tennis this morning, and that was a lot of fun.
Motherfucker.
I said that was a lot of fun, and that's where I left that statement.
Okay.
Did you have something to add?
Nope.
Was it a silver lining kind of morning for you?
Nope. Sergio?
My silver lining was hearing about the tennis match.
Nope. We don't have to
At
talk
Wembley.
about it. No, you bastard. Okay, fine. Fucking tell the story. Tell the story.
Of how I beat you in tennis?
Yeah. Go on,
Oh, boy.
you twat.
Well, it's not that exciting. I mean, we played 7 games total because we had to get back home. And, it was 3-3. And in game 7, I shut it out.
Yeah, okay.
Shut it out. Shut that shit down.
All right,
Yeah.
moving on
A
to
goose
Sergio.
egg.
Sergio, moving on to you. Sergio, moving on to you before I flip this table over. Fucking hate losing so much.
I love playing tennis with you.
Fucking hate to lose.
The vein in his forehead looks like it's about to pop right now.
Throbbing.
It's protruding.
Throbbing. Throbbing.
For me, silver lining was that it was spring break. And so I have had a whole week to just recharge my batteries and hang out with family. I had my brother came in from Guatemala and got to meet my wife and child, and my mother was in town. So we just had a grand old time. Got to go to D.C.
That's awesome.
Got to go to the National Aquarium down in Baltimore. And I have to say, too, the first start of it was a little cold, but the weather has steadily improved. And so, it's a little muggy today, but overall, there's a nice breeze. You can open up the windows. You can hear the birds chirping.
Yeah,
Life's good.
I really enjoy that during the spring months, we can count on you for a full weather report in every episode because of how much you love the spring and the warm weather.
I just have a hard time understanding how people, I understand like allergies and stuff like that, but
It's the worst time of the year.
No, it's not.
I just,
Worst period.
the flowers are coming up. I don't know. I think it's just fantastic. It's just a fantastic time to be able to open up windows, to just see just life, coming back.
When I was a kid, because I have an April birthday, I would anticipate the end of the month. But I remember even as a kid, like being very mindful of watching how the month looked at the beginning versus how it did at the end. And if you pay attention to the trees, especially, you go from like nothing to full leaves by the end of the month.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it is a really transformative month, which is why I believe it is the best month that there is. So the end.
And I love the cherry blossoms too. There's lots of cherry blossoms that are out, the tulips, the daffodils. I got to start cutting grass. I love me mowing some lawn.
I am so bored by this conversation about spring.
All right, why don't we talk about fucking tennis, son?
Let's talk about what I want to talk about. The Arsenal. The Arsenal won. Arsenal got through. We're now in the semifinal. Hey, look, now that we've got our silver linings out of the way, why don't we take a real quick beer break? When we come back, we're going to discuss the week that was, and we're also going to be talking about our douche canoe of the week. So our douche canoe of the week is the counterterrorism czar for the United States. His name is Sebastian Gorka.
More like Sebastian Dorka. I thought of that on the way up here.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. You were primed and ready too. It was quick.
Well done.
And I guess maybe even more holistically, the whole immigration program that we've got going on right now. So Sebastian Gorka, for those of you who are not familiar with this absolute douche of a man, he is a former Hungarian citizen who helped Viktor Orban get into power. So, that's cool.
He's British, though, right?
So he was Hungarian-born, raised in London. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So here's a quick bit from his time when he was on Newsmax.
The White House now saying Abrego Garcia is a human trafficker. That's what we learned today from the White House press briefing. And again, a judge ruled 6 years ago that he couldn't be deported from this country because he was a gang member. And that judge had fears that he would be targeted by rival gangs in El Salvador. Doesn't that just solve the question right there in itself?
Well, the question is solved, Rob. Good evening. At so many levels. Number one, this individual is a foreign national who came here illegally. So that's your
Just
first
listening to
two
his
strikes.
twatty British accent right now. Oh, he's a foreign national. With the hypocrisy of him being from Hungary and being a foreign national in England.
Oh my God. I watched way too much of Sebastian Gorka, but we'll continue this going.
Then we find out he's a member of an organization that we recently designated as a foreign terrorist organization. So 3 strikes and you're out. And it's quite telling that we have Democrats on Capitol Hill, not just the lunatics who are torching Tesla dealerships in acts of terrorism themselves, saying, oh my gosh, the rights of this individual. You mean the terrorist?
Fuck you.
Dog, and again, like the whole hypocrisy is like people are torching Tesla car dealerships. What about the fuckers that were torching the Capitol?
Free as a bird.
Yeah, free as a bird is right. So we're going to continue the clip here in a second, but one of the things, Ken Klippenstein's Substack, I subscribe to it, and so I was just reading through it, and one of the things that he identifies is that Gorka is not a marginal figure, right? Like he is the senior director of counterterrorism at the White House, and this is the kind of things that he says.
Who came here illegally, and that individual who said, I can't go home because one gang that I'm not a member of wants to kill me because I am a member of another gang. Seriously, Rob, if you read this in a fictional novel 10 years ago, you'd say absolutely absurd. This is where we are today. President Trump, Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan are trying to keep us safe, but the other side of the aisle is on the side of the terrorists.
What kind of terrorists?
How do you define terrorist, right? Like, what is the definition of terrorist now? And it is what the White House is saying it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because you could use the same verbiage for what the White House is. They're terrorizing Americans.
Or what about those? I forgot the name of the group, but the white guys that are marching around.
Proud Boys?
No, not that group. It's another one. It's a
KKK?
a white national. Getting warmer.
Getting warmer.
Take your pick. But
The Republican Party. Sorry.
well, walking around,
Neo-Nazis.
just all of them.
Yeah. That
The Republican Party.
That to me seems more terroristic than a man who is a day laborer.
Wrangler Star.
That the taxonomy of politics in America is dead. It's not left and right. It's not even Republican or Democrat. There's one line that divides us. Do you love America or do you hate America? It's really quite that simple. And we have people who love America, like the president, like his cabinet, like the directors of his agencies, who want to protect Americans. And then there is the other side that is on the side of the cartel members, on the side of the illegal aliens, on the side of the terrorists. And you have to ask yourself, are they technically aiding and abetting them? Because aiding and abetting criminals and terrorists is a crime in federal statute.
So, yeah, I think that there is a lot to be said there. He is masterfully putting it in simple words to you're either with us or against us.
Yep.
And
you're aiding terrorists.
Aiding terrorists if you believe that there should be no thing as due process.
Yeah. Yeah. If you believe in a person's right to due process in this country, that makes you a terrorist now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, make this make sense. First, the narrative was he's there because of an administrative error, and that was admitted. So now suddenly he's a terrorist, and he's part of a gang, and he's, a wife beater. It's interesting how we spun that narrative.
The story changed very quickly.
It sure did.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder why that would happen like that. I don't know. Anyway, so The Guardian interviewed a bunch of Trump staffers and department personnel, and they had to say this. An unnamed person close to Trump's national security team told the Washington Post almost universally the entire team considers Gorka a clown. They are dreading working with him. And when you hear things like that, it's like, yeah, of course they are. But here's another Gorka lowlight that I want to bring to
Lowlight.
They're all low life.
We live in the most perverse time in history. We are being led and run. Our nations are under the control of people who hate our countries. Biden's old boss on the campaign trail said, my goal is to fundamentally change America. If you look at the last 2.5 years, what would you do differently if you wanted to destroy America? Nothing. Why is the border open? Because they're so racist, they're so bigoted, they think, oh, brown people coming into America, great. Why are they letting millions into this country? To maintain control forever, because they're such racists. They think, let 30 million in, we'll amnesty them, and because they're brown, black, they're going to vote Democrat. This is how racist they are.
Pause
Your
it.
skin color.
So the thing that's super interesting about that is that if they're letting somebody in the country, they can't vote.
Sergio, why would you stop it?
They can't vote.
No, they can. They absolutely can. The Republicans have been telling me that for the last 30 years.
And I think we've talked about this in previous episodes, but just kind of culturally speaking, Hispanic culture is generally a lot more conservative than we tend to believe. And so they believe in family values, and not saying that Democrats don't believe in family values, but anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ stuff.
A lot of Catholics. It's a very heavily Catholic
and evangelical now.
Yeah, represented people there. Like the entire, I don't want to classify the entire Central and South America as
you can.
But as far as I'm concerned, kidding. We'll finish this up here.
Determines who you vote for if you're a Democrat.
If you didn't hear that, he said at the end to wrap up that clip was, if your skin color determines who you vote for. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. Well,
and if we just even look at this last election, didn't Trump make a whole bunch of gains with Hispanic and
So it's just racism. It's just racism.
Basically. And he was also too, right? Wasn't he with Milo Yiannopoulos?
Yiannopoulos. Yeah. That guy's a fucking nightmare.
Well, he is, which was this really conservative gay guy that basically said it. Yeah, and said basically like if children were molested, that they wanted to be molested, and but they were kind of lumped together for a while.
Oh yeah, big time. They were I think it was like the Daily Callers, but they both worked for that organization.
Yeah.
I'm going to play you guys a clip real quick. This is from 6 years ago.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Donald J. Trump. I am a legal immigrant to the United States. My parents were both refugees who escaped a dictatorial regime to the West. The idea that an amendment that was designed to protect freed slaves and their children from Democrats who didn't want to give them U.S. citizenship is now being used to provide migrant status potentially to thousands of people who want to come to America ostensibly for economic reasons is dastardly. This is not what the amendment to the Constitution is about. There are rules about applying for asylee status. One of the most important ones is, as soon as you leave your country where you are fearful for your future, you're supposed to apply for asylum in the first country you land in. So why are these people walking thousands of miles to America? You know what it's all about, really.
Yeah, what is it? What is it really about?
Yeah.
What is he saying?
Judy,
that he's
what do
not,
you think?
What is
What-
he saying that he's not saying?
What do you think he's saying that he's not saying, Judy?
Well, I think he wants a free pass because he's a white guy. I mean, in summary.
But in summary, he's just
Is
a
he
racist.
is he a white guy?
Ethnically speaking, yeah, I think Hungarians fall into white.
No, he wouldn't. So that's not considered Middle Eastern?
I don't think so. No.
No.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
Eastern
yeah.
European.
I think. I mean,
They're
I think
very white.
Yeah, it's very white in that way. But no, I think like a couple of things that have really stuck out in the last two videos. One, like the soaring music score from the first one, where it was like very triumphant, like it's your job as a white man to protect this country from the invading hordes of brown people.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing, and I mentioned in the show note here that it's from 6 years ago. So Sebastian Gorka has been on this 14th Amendment doesn't mean shit thing for a while, right? Like the idea that just because you are here and you have a, you know, as they would call it, an anchor baby or, you know, some kind of gateway to get into the country and stay here. No, so he's also Islamophobic as fuck. Here he is just lumping an entire religion of people together.
Your viewers need to go back, it's on YouTube, and watch his Warsaw speech. There's this one sentence that is absolutely crucial to anyone understanding President Trump in the Middle East, President Trump in Europe, President Trump in Asia, and just the legacy. Near the end of the speech, he says, "The only question of the age is whether or not we in the West have the will to protect Judeo-Christian civilization from those who wish to destroy it. Do we have the backbone to save our civilization from the barbarians who are trying to destroy it? Whether it's 9/11, October the 7th, that's the only question."
So the question is, though, he loves to rub elbows with the Saudis and all the money that they have. So
Yeah.
that's a big contradiction right there. And you know, I'm going to come in. I'm going to take over just for a second.
Please.
So my vote for the douche canoe was going to be Elon Musk asking women to have babies with him over Twitter, which is fucking so disgusting. He is such a disgusting person.
He's a pig.
But there's this whole thought right now that in Europe and the United States that there's not enough babies, white babies being made.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
That. Yeah.
And that, you know, these shithole countries.
They're shitholes. They're coming to our country. They're
They're
making
having
it shit.
babies. So that it goes back to what we've talked about before of the great replacement theory, right?
Yeah.
Is that, you know, brown and black babies are going to have more babies and they're gonna take over. And so, you know, and just hearing that, it just, I don't know. There's a lot of
Well, he said the quiet part out loud.
oh yeah, they don't give a fuck. That's the thing. They don't care at all. And people just say whatever they want to say. And you're like, is this real?
Yeah, unfortunately.
I mean, it might feel wild if you come from a place where like you've never heard people's hatred spoken out loud. But when you've heard it before, it shouldn't. I mean, it shouldn't, but it probably doesn't surprise you too much that we don't actually evolve very much if we stay in those belief systems. You know, so I think in typical thinking, what it is, oh, you haven't done that work yet. Oh, that's really unfortunate for you, because I think that, you know, like present company in this room probably does think about it that way. You know, like,
No, we don't. We hate them all.
well, yeah.
You get him out of our country. I'm glad to see that Guatemala leave the country.
When you
Glad he's gone.
when you're reminded that people are this hateful and
Yeah,
they are
yeah.
really like very loud about it. It's
Well, and I think just to piggyback off what you're saying, that it is just also just astounding is that now they have mouthpieces for it that are in power, that are saying what these people want
that was the point.
out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the point. That's
Yeah.
why they elected him, because he has given them this permission.
Do you guys remember in the Trump Part 1 of
I don't remember anything because there's so much fucking shit that is happening.
I'll tell you what,
every
yeah,
week.
like pre-COVID life, my life before COVID, it's a distant memory.
Sure, but
the
do you
last 5 years have just been.
do you guys remember though when it was
Sleepy Joe.
when he got into office and everyone was like, all right, well, at least there are adults in the room, right?
Yeah,
There
people
are-
to check them.
there are internal checks there. There are people who value the democracy that that he's supposed to be ushering into a new era, whatever, right? But then you saw him at some point in time on the campaign trail say things like, "I'm your tool of revenge" or something like that. I forget how it was worded exactly, but he was saying something to that effect of like, "Don't worry, when I get in, I'm going to do the worst possible things I can do."
Dog, we had John Bolton as one of Trump's advisor, who's not a very sympathetic character.
Yeah,
but
not at all.
he is a fucking saint compared to the people that that's in the administration right now.
Because at least he was like, you knew he was a war hawk. You knew it.
Yeah.
Like John Bolton was a pile
He
of
was
shit.
who he was.
Yeah, and you knew that because he told you that. Like the people there now, like the fact that Stephen Miller is now in front of a microphone a lot more should be very worrying for everybody.
Pete
Or
Hegseth
RFK.
or RFK.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about him today, actually. So,
Oh, good.
Gabby.
yeah. Oh, God, don't even get me started on Gabby. Fucking Gabby. The one thing I do want to highlight as a big shout out to our representatives from the state of Maryland,
Heck yeah.
Chris Van Hollen, man.
Senators.
Doing, yeah. I mean, he represents us, right? But doing the hard work and doing the work that needs to be done. You know, Van Hollen, he goes down to CCOT to try to get eyes on Mr. Garcia.
And so for people that don't know, CCOT is the maximum security prison in San Salvador that U.S. taxpayers are paying for $6 million.
$6 million.
It's almost like if Doge wanted to find a gigantic waste of money.
to send American citizens
Yeah.
without due process.
But as I said at the beginning, this case is not only about one man, as important as that is. It is about protecting fundamental freedoms and the fundamental principle in the Constitution for due process that protects everybody who resides in America. This should not be an issue for Republicans or Democrats. This is an issue for every American who cares about our Constitution, who cares about personal liberty, who cares about due process, and who cares about what makes America so different, which is adherence to all of those things. This is an American issue.
Man, fucking hell yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I couldn't agree more.
That's amazing. That gives me goosebumps listening to that.
Yeah, you know, that is a silver lining in all of this story, right? Like, at least somebody is trying to do something.
Yeah.
And
We're going to get into the staged margaritas, right?
please talk about the stage margaritas.
So at first they denied him a visit.
Mm-hmm.
Then they were like, just kidding. Come on over here to this coffee shop so you can like make our country look nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's lovely, parts of it, not the CCOT part. But so first they denied him entry, but they had also let these Republican fucks go in there and take selfies in front of like prisoners. But so then all of a sudden they're in this cafe and he's in plain street clothes and apparently... Allegedly, you know, they tried to stage putting some margaritas down on the
Yeah.
table, but they were removed.
Yeah.
I just, what the fuck? What is going on? Like,
So I saw something like on
So
Fox and dailymail.co.uk, like all these trash news
What? They're not legit?
Yeah, actually, as it turns out, it
The
was
New
on-
York Post?
the New
Is
York-
it-
it was on the New York Post too. But yeah, like they're like Chris Van Hollen wastes taxpayer dollars to go drink margaritas with MS-13 gang members.
Meanwhile, Rachel Morin's mother is being pulled into the White House as a political
Right.
piece of propaganda.
Right. Well, she also will not stop. She continues to go with that. So
I mean, so just to be sympathetic, at least, not to her political views, but her daughter was murdered.
No, yeah, absolutely.
But that's a separate case, and so like to it's apples and oranges, and it was meant as a deflection.
It's brown people terrorizing whites. That's all it is.
I mean, yes.
It's an invasion.
Yes, of course. That's what this
all
is.
it can be. Some guy who literally wasn't doing anything to anybody, who was just minding his own fucking business, gets pulled off the street, ends up in El Salvador, and they somehow try to make that into immigrants are killing white women. One of the things that you said something here just a second ago, though, this idea of a staged meeting with, an innocent man in an El Salvadorian jail that he's an American citizen. How this even fucking logs, I don't know. But look at fucking Russia. Look at North Korea. It's the exact same fucking propaganda bullshit that gets played out in these authoritarian, fascistic, hyper-communist, hyper-dictatorial systems.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here as Americans going, this is okay. And if you just step back for 1 second and just think about the things that happen in Russia where you go, that's not okay. Oh shit, that's happening in Saudi Arabia? That's not okay. Fucking think about it for 2 seconds and you might start rubbing. If you're a Fox News viewer, how do you not see the exact one-to-one parallel?
Someone, I don't...
Because you don't want to see it.
You can't.
There was some sort of clip that it was a screenshot of with Caroline, what's her face?
Levitt.
Yes, Caroline Levitt. Oh my God. She also...
This is also kind of crazy, is that she's like 27, married to like a 60-year-old.
That doesn't surprise me at all, actually. It was a clip of her saying something like, if you don't believe in woke things like math, the tariffs are great. And it was a caption on Fox News. And this is the kind of horse shit that people are being spoon-fed.
Yeah.
And
no
wonder people are so confused and like brainwashed.
Yeah.
Stupid people are.
It's the Alex Jones effect. It's the Alex Jonesification of our nation. Like everyone now believes in conspiracy theory.
We're not on the way there.
We're here.
We're been here.
There was somebody who was talking about this. I was listening to this professor who was giving some kind of lecture at Oxford, and he was talking about the state of the where the United States is today. This is like something that happened last week, so it's not aged at all. It literally is current. So they were talking about, if you think that a constitutional crisis is coming, you're not paying attention. You're already there. And if you can see innocent people who have not had any of their due process respected in this country and somehow put 1 and 1 together and come up with 4, you're not paying attention. You're just not paying attention. We are in a constitutional crisis. The fact that last night the Supreme Court said you cannot send these people to El Salvador.
9-0. That's Clarence fucking Thomas.
Right.
On that side.
We are now in an Andrew Jackson, if they want to enforce the laws, let them do it moment. And it's happening in 2025. This isn't the 1800s where laws were just being like recognized as a thing. We're talking about established law, and he is fucking affronting the Supreme Court.
He's giving him a big giant
and
bird.
Saying, enforce it.
Yep.
You want to enforce it? What are you going to do? I run the fucking military.
Right.
I run the entire bureaucracy at this point. The entire thing bends its knee to me. Tech companies bend
Congress
their knee
on my
to me.
side.
Everyone is bending the knee except for the Supreme Court in these moments. Not like they're not giving him wins. Let's not give them credit here.
No credit at all.
But, respect due where respect's due. If you are saying to the Supreme Court, what are you going to fucking do about it? We are in a constitutional crisis. We're not like lurking towards it. Bernie Sanders said something. I was watching like this Roundup clip that he had out from like 2012 all the way to current day. He was like, we're lurking towards a, oligarchy. We're oligarchy. Like this, like every year he's like talking about like how we're getting closer and closer. And in 2025, like the clip was, we're in the oligarchy. What are we going to do about it now? So we're in
oligarchy.
Yeah, we're now in that like the tech, the techno feudalism era of our fascistic government. Like we're there now. I say we take a real quick beer break, though. We could talk probably about this immigration thing and what's happening with the Supreme Court for probably 2 hours in itself. But we have quite a bit of ground to cover. So let's go ahead and take a real quick beer break. When we come back, we're going to talk about our main story of the week, RFK Jr., and how he is going to try to kill the entire Western Panhandle of Texas.
Neat.
All right, so we're back, and I think we're like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about RFK Jr. And
Why? Fuck that guy.
Did you guys see this whole thing that he was talking about earlier this week? It's some of the biggest nonsense you'll see this week, I think.
Are going at your direction. We are going to know by September. We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
So, which is so fucking disgusting to begin with, the autism epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
So, a spokesperson from Autism Self-Advocacy Network told Newsweek that there is no autism epidemic, a stance that many autism advocacy organizations take. Instead, pointing to misdiagnosing in previous years, we have come a long way in our understanding of what autism is, and better understanding has led to higher rates of diagnosis. This is nothing to panic about. It certainly isn't proof of an environmental cause of autism. And Judy, I want to go to you here.
He also said that it destroys families, and the internet went ape shit over that.
Yeah.
So I have something here
Because they can't get like jobs.
Read this.
Yeah.
This. Okay.
This is what I was going to bring up, but you're on it.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal.
No.
I didn't mean to steal
You're going to say it
thunder.
a lot more eloquently than I could ever.
So someone named Jessica had to say, "Do you know what destroys families? Losing a child to a vaccine-preventable disease destroys families, not autism. Not being able to afford healthcare destroys families, not autism. Canceling clinical trials for life-saving treatments destroys families, not autism. Defunding public health destroys families, not autism. Being subjected to ableism and eugenic ideologies destroys families, not autism. School shootings destroy families, not autism." We can put a pin in the fact that there was another one this week that happened in Florida, and it was the son of an officer of the law who was responsible, and a white kid. Moving on, losing a child
to tell the story.
Losing a child to a chronic disease like cancer destroys families, not autism. Not having access to nutritious food destroys families, not autism. Defunding public education destroys families, not autism. Misinformation destroys families, not autism.
Yeah. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure everyone who I've ever met who is neurodivergent, who has autism, who's just different in that way, has never done anything to negatively impact my life. But the people who are currently in office, who are trying to make these decisions about what it means to be autistic and like this epidemic, these are people who are actually doing harm.
Well, the language itself is harmful.
Yes.
The optics are really piss poor.
Bad. Very bad.
The week that a child with autism was killed in his own yard.
In Idaho.
And
It's fucking ridiculous, man.
it just, and it is Autism Awareness Month.
Yeah, I was going to say it's Autism Awareness Month. So, to really hammer the point home that we don't actually care about anything that you have to say.
Well, just this kind of rhetoric is harmful, and the reality is what you said. We know more now. Let's stop pretending like that's being woke and just call it what it is. We know more. We have more information. So we need to stop stigmatizing because it's harmful. And it further separates people who are neurodivergent from people who are neurotypical. And the reality is that we all live in the same fucking world. And we need to be supportive of those populations and raise awareness around what it means so that we can all be a little bit more empathic toward one another.
Right. That's right.
Well, and to just piggyback off what Judy was just saying is that Kennedy was quoted saying, autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which is our children.
Right.
Which
it's
is
eugenics.
But he's also saying that people with autism will never be able to write poetry. They'll never be able to fall
Hold a
in
job,
love,
pay taxes.
Pay taxes.
What
They'll
else?
just be a burden on society.
Be in relationships.
Yes, that was another thing.
Yes.
And the internet fucking crushed him for that.
They lit his ass up.
I mean, after hearing that, so I work with, in the job that I have, I work with a population that has autism, from really, really high functioning to low functioning.
Sure.
And I spoke to one of my teachers who is passionate, that works with the population, and she said one of the greatest shows is Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah.
And she said that
it's a great show.
You watch it, it's heartwarming. You see people that they have their struggles when it comes to social awareness and things like that, but it's just amazing, and it's feel good, and it just like, I go home, it might be trash TV, because it's a reality show, but she says I can just unwind by just watching this, and it makes me feel good. And I work in my job with a lot of kids all over the spectrum, and they're amazing.
Yeah,
they're awesome kids, and they can do all of the things that RFK said that they can't do.
You know what? My first experience working in my field was with children on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And
that was Brooklyn, right?
No, it was in Pennsylvania. And I worked at a small little clinic that had an after-school program. And I remember that these kids were truly on a spectrum, because they ranged from like really limited vocabulary and comprehension, but like some sort of like really unique strength, to like pretty well socialized and integrated into typical social environments, but like would have a quirk here and there.
Sure.
Whether it be sensory based or things like that.
Some kind of trigger.
But there was one kid who probably developmentally was below 10 for sure, but maybe around age 15 when I worked with him. And he knew probably less than 100 words, but if you told him any date on the calendar, he could tell you what day of the week it occurred. So I told him the day of my birth, and he went, Thursday. And I checked the calendar, and I was born on a Thursday. Like, I mean, it was pretty remarkable. And he was really into Thomas the train. Yeah, for sure.
Choo choo.
In summary, what I want to say about this is, be yourself. Everybody else is taken is one of my favorite things to say, because we're not. I just don't get behind this mentality that we're all meant to be whitewashed. Well.
And I would also say, I want to piggyback off that. My first experience with working with an individual with autism, it was Asperger's syndrome, which is
R.I.P.
Yeah, is not a diagnosis, because I think Dr. Asperg was a Nazi.
Goodbye. He's canceled.
Yeah,
he was in the eugenics, folks.
He
loved the eugenics.
But this was a kid that had memorized all of the Harry Potter books. So you could say, what was page 49 on book 1, The Sorcerer's Stone? And he could
recite it.
He could recite it verbatim.
That's fucking wild.
And it was insane how just his brain worked in that way.
It's fascinating. Truly a wonder. And I think depending on what pair of glasses you're wearing, you can either view it as a strength or a weakness.
I wish that RFK...
Elon Musk has autism, right?
So he says.
So he says.
I think it's just the ketamine. That's just me, though.
But he was also saying that, again, I was listening to some podcasts about him, but he would have these obsessive work hours where he would work 17, 18 hours a day.
We have other things that we call that too, though. He could have
douchebag syndrome.
He could have bipolar disorder.
He's definitely bipolar.
He could be manic.
I'm making that call right now. He's bipolar. I just made it.
Well, I think you're going to see an emergence of a lot more adults who identify as having autism, and they go and they get tested as adults, and it went undiagnosed when they were kids. And that kind of speaks to that point, just kind of drawing it back to the original point here that it's not an epidemic. It's not something you're seeing an emergence of. We're gathering more information, and we know more, and we can now call things what they are.
Well, if you remember, though, so think about it this way, right? Like, this is an administration the first time around that wanted people to stop testing COVID so that the COVID numbers would go down. It's not that there were less people with COVID, that they were just testing less. This is the same type of administration that wants to find a way to justify some kind of, cleansing the blood of the nation kind of thinking, right?
We're gonna get to the bottom of this by September.
Yeah, like what does that look like? Are all autistic people like being sent to some kind of like camp, or like they being or are they
Well,
being?
Donald wants 5 more next to CCOT,
Right.
so you know.
But like my question with RFK and this whole situation around autism is like, are we talking about vaccinating them with something? Are we talking about injecting them with something? Like, how do you quote unquote fix autism?
I think aborting them.
Yeah, I think that
doesn't really mix well with the narrative, though.
But it does.
What do you think he's got up his sleeve?
Oh, he's pro-abortion. He was, and that was one of the big
that was one of the big things when he came to the Republican Party was that he's pro-abortion. But speaking of the Republican Party, here RFK is with Trump this past week.
And we have, as you know, we have now the autism rates have gone from now most recent numbers we think are going to be about 1 in 31, 1 in 20, so they're going up again from 1 in 10,000 when I was a kid. And we are going at your direction. We are going to know by September.
Pause
We've
it.
launched a massive.
When was he a kid?
I don't know, but I think like
Fucking 1879.
Simultaneously, I think 1 in every 100 kids is also eating bears in Central Park. So like I don't
have
know
brain worms.
Yeah, I don't know what the statistic means here.
A testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
So big. Think of that. So it was 1 in 10,000 children had autism, and now it's 1 in 31. Not 31,000, 31.
So pause it. So one of the questions I have: when was that data frame?
Who knows?
When he said, because
they
the
could
other
be
thing,
making it up. They could be making it up
all,
They
I
make
mean,
up everything.
yeah.
Where do these numbers come from?
They didn't cite any of the thing when they were talking about that. So
Well, and it's just like,
Citations are too woke.
but you just think of it too. The population has increased a lot, and there's a lot more awareness of different ways of learning, and there's probably a bunch of kids that could probably be diagnosed as autistic or with autism spectrum disorder that weren't going to be diagnosed 20 years ago.
Right. And like, it's not as if it's a death sentence. And I think that that's the thing that people who see people who are neurodivergent, like they're like, oh, he's autistic, so it's a death sentence. Like they can't do anything. Like you guys were saying earlier, like RFK was saying, oh, they can't hold down a relationship, they can't have a job, blah, 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 blah.
Write a poem. That really pissed a lot of people off, the poem thing. So they in turn went and wrote poems.
Yeah.
And that's what really broke the internet this week was the poems about this.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It makes me really angry.
Well, I had an instance that it made me almost kind of teary that I have a kid that I work with who's on the spectrum, and they were having this conversation in class about kind of the political aspect of life. And he said, I'm really worried about this because this is going to affect people like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was before RFK was nominated as the HHS.
Yeah.
I think anybody who is in a group that identifies as being vulnerable or being a minority is worried. At least if they're paying attention.
And you know what? With one of the signs of not having a lot of social awareness with people with autism, this kid
It's a hell of
showed
a lot of awareness about that, huh?
Now, are children like children of color? Are they higher? Do they have a higher diagnosis?
No.
Diagnosis of
Externalizing behavioral disorders, yes, but not specific to autism. And
no, in those classes that I have, it's mostly
white children who are
there's some
it's
African American kids.
It's actually pretty well mixed and blended because the reality is
autism doesn't fucking discriminate.
It doesn't discriminate, but also, well, it looks different on everyone, and that's why it is a lot harder to classify. It's a lot harder to diagnose, and now we have more refined systems for testing for this. That's another reality that we'd love to sit here and deny, but the reality is science has made it possible for us to know more about this bullshit, right? Yeah. So that's a big part of this. That's why you see numbers increase, because we get closer to the mark, right?
Yeah.
But
Like,
there's
That's
also
the whole point of it, right?
Well, there's also the downside of it too, because you're pathologizing people, and you're saying, "Oh, this is a deficiency," right? Like,
Right.
oh, just because you're, quirky like this, then
I don't want
we've
to be
gotta-
I don't want to be controversial and say that if you know how to answer the questions to those tests too, you might receive a diagnosis if you've got the money for it. But we could get into that on another episode, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
But
The way
I'm
that
not. You know
people
what?
manipulate the mental health
I
system.
want to be.
and
I
all.
want to be very
Yeah.
clear that for anyone who identifies as having anything going on, I stand with you, and I'm not here to deny your experience.
Sure.
Like point blank, period, end of sentence. If you say you are going through this and you're experiencing this, I believe you, and I stand with you. And
Absolutely.
however I can be supportive of your experience to make it a little bit easier for you to be here, you don't have to educate me either. I can just show up and accept that whatever you have going on is what you have going on.
Sure.
And if we all maybe took a little bit closer to that stance, we probably wouldn't.
Sounds woke. Sounds woke.
We wouldn't be
Sounds
calling,
very
but
woke.
we wouldn't be calling this an epidemic.
Well, Cheeto and Chief had this to say about autism. There's,
Who is that?
Donnie, old Donnie boy.
Cheeto and Chief.
Cheeto and Chief. Cheeto and Chief. He's
Good
got this.
one.
He's got this to say. There's got to be something artificial out there that's doing this. If you can come up with that answer, where you stop talking, taking something, eating something, maybe, or maybe it's a shot, but something's causing it. I don't even know. I hear that in my head through his voice because there's only one way for me to hear anything he says, and it's through the most ridiculous prism of all time. And I use the voice to like make light of a really heavy situation very often.
Absolutely.
But he's talking about something incredibly scary.
That he has no
training on,
kind of
no
train
understanding,
or background, or doesn't
no
even really care
understanding.
about.
Not a fucking clue.
He doesn't care. And I use the voice to kind of like make light of it. But like to say that, oh, maybe it's you're eating something or maybe it's something that you're taking, like this is a eugenics
We have debunked
program.
these theories
It's
a million
eugenics.
years ago.
It's
We've
eugenics.
debunked this already. We've already looked at we've looked at the genetics of the father. We've looked at vaccines. We've looked at diet.
Here's the thing. Here's this thing. I don't mean to cut across you here. The Germans already did this in World War II, where they were trying to eliminate people with autism.
Yeah.
It's happening again.
We're just coming for the different groups one by one.
No, it's the same fucking groups of people. Like they're talking about autistic people are bringing down, like they're not going to be able to have jobs. They can't pay into the tax system. So what do we need them around for? They're useless eaters. Yeah. This is eugenics happening again.
But they
and
do pay
again.
taxes. They do pay taxes, and also they're just reading from the playbook. You're. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm not.
It's
You're
the
absolutely
same
right.
fucking thing.
They're reading
We're
from the playbook.
talking about eliminating people because of a
Curing
genetic
people.
defects. RFK wants to send kids with autism to quote farms to work like they do in North Korea or like they were doing in Russia during
Are these the
early
mental health camps?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like this is what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
We're not like again, I use the voice to make light of things because I cannot live in a space where it's so heavy all the time. But we're talking about the inevitable movement to putting people with autism in camps.
We're all on the same page. Everybody
I
hears.
know that.
We're all on the same page.
I know that. I'm passionate
angry.
about this because there are so many people who are blindly backstepping into this and going,
Yeah, no,
things
no.
are fine, things are fine, things are fine.
Meaning the same page. Meaning, guys, wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up. This is really scary shit. Like we're all just raising aware. Like that's what we're sitting here doing. We're raising
Yeah.
awareness around this because this is really terrifying shit that we're here.
Yeah.
So let's continue to draw the parallels because if you weren't aware that this looks exactly like Nazi Germany,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and dig our heels in.
Well, like to get back to like the first segment, we were talking about immigration and we were talking about like the deportation of legal citizens when they deported people to Auschwitz. Auschwitz wasn't in Germany, people. It was in fucking Poland.
Poland.
So when you talk about like we're doing things the exact same fucking way they were doing in Nazi Germany, and people are like, oh well, we're not in a constitutional crisis yet. It's not that bad yet. Oh well, you need to stop being so like passionate about this stuff. It doesn't mean anything. Talking about the fucking end of people.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Here's a blurb from Mayo Clinic.
Hold on. I feel like before we move on,
gotta come down off of that a little bit.
We gotta process and just kind of get.
Talk me through it. Talk me through it.
Well, and
because I get fired up really fast about this stuff now.
I feel like there's been a lot of strong emotions from the three panelists that we have here, discussing all of this, and I think you're absolutely right. Is that whether it's a left or right thing, on both sides, there's going to be families that have family members or children that have autism spectrum disorder.
Fucking discriminate.
It doesn't. And I think the other thing too is you're not going to be able to inject bleach into your blood to make sure that you don't have children with autism. Yeah. And the other scary thing is that we have an administration that wants to get rid of special education. Yes. So we don't want to be able to help and support people. Yeah. So we're going to kind of
social program.
Contribute into this narrative that people with autism aren't going to be able to, they're going to be just...
They're even more useless than before, folks.
Exactly.
See, we told you.
Yeah. So, and, I think that, and that's going to impact everybody, red, blue states, purple states.
Anywhere in between. Everybody.
All over the country.
You know somebody with autism. Whether you know it or not, you know somebody with autism. You know somebody who's black. You know somebody who's gay. You know somebody who is a target for this fucking shit.
I think we can expand. It's not just autism, it's neurodivergence.
Sure,
and so if you extend your reach even further, you know even more people.
Mm-hmm.
My big question is, what are they taking away from you? Because we've already debunked the myth that they don't pay taxes and they don't write poetry and they can't be in relationships. So what are they taking away from you?
Let's debunk another thing here, right? So the Mayo Clinic says this: vaccines do not cause autism. A small study in 1998 suggested a link between vaccination and autism spectrum disorder. The study was reviewed further and retracted. In addition, the author's medical license was revoked due to falsified information.
Andrew Wakefield of England.
Since then, numerous studies have debunked a connection between autism and the measles, mumps, and rubella MMR vaccination. In April 2015, JAMA, I assume that is some kind of Journal of American Medical Association, something like that, published the largest study to date analyzing the health records of over 95,000 children. About 2,000 of those children were classified at risk for autism because they had a sibling already diagnosed with autism. The study confirmed that MMR vaccine did not increase their risk for autism spectrum disorder. And I've got all the vaccines, right? As a kid, we all, you went to public school, you had to get vaccinations. That was just a part of it, right? To sit here and say that vaccinations cause a genetic switch that gets flipped on or off, that gives vaccination a lot of credit for a lot of different things that it's not built or designed to do. So I think we should take a real quick beer break, though. This is obviously something that we all care about, and we care about it deeply. The idea of myth busting, the conspiracy theories that are out there around autism spectrum disorder, all that. But I think it's important, folks, to just understand this isn't the reality, what they're pushing. And it is eugenics. It is a eugenics program. If you take the time to look into what they did in World War II leading up to it, this is the exact same fucking thing. It is from the playbook.
And a lot of other dire consequences with people that aren't getting these childhood vaccines that are having catastrophic effects.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment because one of the things that RFK is better known for at this point is his involvement in Samoa, and we've talked about that. I think it was in one of the first new episodes of the year where we talked about RFK's involvement. But we're going to take a little bit deeper dive in the next segment. We're also going to talk about his involvement in the extermination of people in the Western Panhandle of Texas.
Excellent.
So I wanted to learn a little bit about the history of vaccines because, frankly, it's something we all take for granted, I think, right? And I think it's pretty interesting.
So, hot take.
Sure.
How are you guys with your vaccines?
Well, I think I just got done fighting the flu for about 2 weeks, so I think
but as kids, were you? I was a disaster.
Really?
When I was in 7th grade, my mom told me that I ran out of the doctor's office
afraid of
freaking out.
You're a needle freak?
I was. I'm not
Really?
so much anymore.
Well, it's all the cocaine. I mean, crack. What are you injecting in your arms?
It's HGH.
Okay, so all the HGH.
But I'm still really puny, so I don't know what's happening with me.
I'm taking the wrong HGH.
Oh, dear God.
So
It's the Mexican brand.
I am fully up to date on all
Full
my
black tar,
all
HGH.
vaccines. We're good to go.
Yeah. When you were a kid, did you have a fear of vaccination?
No,
Oh,
I think
I
I
hated
just
it.
I needed a heads up, like you're going to get a shot today.
So modern medicine being what it is, you assume that these types of things have always been around, I guess, right? Like we take these things for granted, right? Like the idea that like, yeah, no, a kid is going to get fucking vaccinated. I went digging around on historyofvaccines.org. They have a really good overview of like a timeline, like, it starts here, it goes there, blah, blah, blah. So the first vaccine was developed in 1796, but before that in 1000 CE, the Chinese were inoculating themselves.
The Chinese virus. Everyone knows
China.
it.
They were inoculating themselves against smallpox by using scabs for the infected and blowing them. They would grind up the scabs and then they would blow them up the nose of the uninfected to inoculate them, or they would take like the pus-filled sores.
Judy is actively almost vomiting over in the corner.
So they would take the pus-filled sore, they would cut it open, and then they would like take like a swab, and they would just like rub it on an open cut of an uninfected person to help inoculate them. So like,
Which is pretty ingenious if you
It
think
is.
about it.
It
I would
really
never
is.
think of
it really is though, isn't it? Like you really, who
would do that?
Who would ever? So
China.
The Chinese
China.
virus.
They say that this actually might go back to 200 BCE that the Chinese were doing this, which is pretty wild to me. So
Greatest civilization ever.
if you walked up to me and you were like, "Yo, dog, let me rub this pus on you real quick," like go ahead and cut your finger open. I'm gonna rub this pus right on top of you.
Dog, you know what I'd say? When and where?
I think I'd probably be like an anti-vax guy during that period of time in China. But let's flash forward real quick to 1700, right? So, and this is where the basis for all modern vaccinations happen. And I wish we had a friend that was smarter on this stuff than all of us in the room, because obviously we're just too dumb to talk about like virology and like what that actually looks like. But essentially, a guy by the name of Edward Jenner, he's the father of vaccinations in 1796, and he tests a hypothesis. Essentially, it goes like this. A person with a much milder or less deadly version of cowpox would render that person immune to smallpox. And Jenner recognizes this, right? So Jenner bases an idea and his theory on his observations of milkmaids. Milkmaids were going into barns every single day, and they were interacting with cows, and they were becoming not slower, but faster and faster. They would become immune to cowpox because of their slow and gentle exposure to the disease, right? So those milkmaids had acquired cowpox through their contact with cows, and they were immune to smallpox as a result, right? So they were slowly inoculated through this. And they, even when exposed to smallpox multiple times, they would avoid this deadly disease. Smallpox, as you remember, the thing that was responsible for the last epidemic that came across this country.
It wiped out most of the Native Americans in North America and Central America
and anywhere it's
South
ever
America.
been for the most part. There's ample evidence that Jenner had studied the findings of other researchers of his time, right? So Jenner details a description of experiments that convinced his colleagues and authorities that inoculation with cowpox, which he called a vaccination, was preferable in terms of safety and virilation, in terms of inoculating the community. Vaccinations are vital to humans not dying of some peasant-ass disease or something far more sinister than that. And enter RFK. The specter of doom himself, right? So
the medical doctor that he is.
Yeah.
Oh.
This guy's.
Oh wait, no, he's not.
He's so well versed in this. He used to be a chair and founded an organization called Children's Health Defense, an organization that is custom built to spread vaccine misinformation and profit off of those lies. And we're not going to go super deep into what happened in Samoa. Because we did talk about it a little bit, and I think it's a pretty well-known story. But if you don't know the high points, essentially, the island of Samoa finds itself in 2018 dealing with a measles outbreak. And allegedly, RFK...
Which is preventable, right?
It is. And
by how?
Up until 2017, they had a vaccination rate of hovering around 80%, which is what they call herd immunity for measles. So
what does that mean, Greg?
So essentially in schools, and if you're especially here in the United States, if you go to a public education facility, you have to have vaccinations. And if you don't have those, you're not allowed to attend, because the idea is if you vaccinate enough people against this disease, there are fewer people who are going to catch it. And if they do catch it, you can localize it and treat those people instead of shutting down, I don't know, an entire island nation and locking them in their homes for at least 72 hours, like what happened on the island of Samoa. So the idea is this. Well, first, do you know what measles are? Like, we talk about it, but
MMR.
Yeah. So, but do you know what measles are? Like
red bumps that you get on your body with a terrible fever that can cause to make you infertile, right?
Yeah, it can do a lot of things to you. So it's I thought it was like the chicken pox. And you know, if you've had the chicken pox, eventually like you might end up with a shingles disease, right? Unless you're vaccinated,
which
right?
is fucking crazy. So have both of you
shingles vaccination?
No. Have you both had chicken pox?
First grade.
I think I was like in the third grade.
I missed constructing our class aquarium, and I was so pissed. And I was like, I had to take like oatmeal baths, and I was so scratchy and itchy.
Yeah.
And
Do you remember?
Fucking awful.
I don't remember it
There's
at all.
a photo of me. I have a photo of myself like,
I was
with
covered
the
in something in
chicken
pink.
pox.
Do you remember like whatever the pink stuff was? Like hydrocortisone
probably
cream or
calamine
something?
lotion.
Calamine lotion.
Yeah.
I was covered in that.
Yeah, because you're so itchy.
Yeah.
I don't remember it at all. But
I remember
heard that
it
can be
vividly.
really, really terrible. So what I'm so jealous of is my sister's generation, who she's 7 years younger, and they've got the chickenpox vaccine, so they'll never have to worry about getting shingles.
Oh, see?
That's pretty wild.
This is why you get this is why you vaccinate.
That's why you vaccinate, because shingles is awful. I remember my mom getting shingles. I was at home and she started getting like sores on her face, and I
thought she was a leper.
Well, basically, I was like, "Oh God, don't touch me! Get away from me!" And she had like,
how could you?
Until she opened up one of her pus sores and then rubbed it on an uninfected part of your skin, like the Chinese used to do.
I think she sprinkled it in my beer.
She ground it up and then she right up your nostrils.
I knew someone in their 40s who recently had shingles.
Yeah, it's a thing.
My sister-in-law had it, and it was awful. She couldn't wear a shirt for 5 days because the sores on her back were awful. So all of us are going to get shingles at some point
Because we had chicken pox.
Maybe.
We can get
We're
the
at a higher
There's a shingles
propensity.
vaccine
There's a
now.
shingles vaccine that we can get now.
You're at a
but
higher level
Guys,
of
what
risk.
are you doing tomorrow? Let's go get shingles vaccine.
Everyone's going to get their shingles vaccine tomorrow. If you're listening to this in a couple of years and you have shingles, guess what? We tried to warn you.
Public education.
So fever, body rashes, cold symptoms, and most importantly of all of these symptoms that come along with measles is severe dehydration, right? Common folks who are infected come along with those types of symptoms, right? Children are at a higher risk for serious complications like death if they're not vaccinated.
detrimental.
Yes, it's really important to get the MMR vaccination for your child if we're just being bluntly honest here.
What's the lifespan on that bad boy? Do you know?
I think it's
Is
a
it
life.
for,
You get it
for
in
life?
sixth grade, and I think you're good after that.
Yeah, I think the idea is that like if you have a herd immunity of over 90%, that like by the time like you phase out of like the middle school, early elementary school period, everyone has it or enough people have it where you're not worried about it.
You know what's pretty wild is that like there are certain vaccines, and I don't know the list off the top of my head, but that they do actually leave your system. So a tetanus shot is one of them. I believe
Sure,
that only
yeah.
lasts about
10
10
years.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of them can last a lifetime. So there are some you never have to repeat.
Hepatitis A, hepatitis B.
Right.
Right.
Insane.
That's wild.
So I got my meningitis shot, meningococcal. I think is what the officiant. And I was like, oh yeah, I got some meningococcal in me.
Yeah, you did.
Pneumococcal?
Pneumococcal.
Pneumococcal pneumonia.
Is that a vaccine for pneumococcal pneumonia?
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 Pneumococcal. That's a fun word.
Yeah, no. So in 2019, though, citizens were forced into lockdown by their government. And they needed if they needed medical vaccination or help, they were told to hang a red flag outside of their home so that healthcare workers knew that they need to stop there. Again, the island nation of Samoa, I'm sure they've got some kind of Wi-Fi, some kind of cell phone service, but a lot of this is like, very much a community-based thing, right? By the time the epidemic had come to its end, over 5,000 people had been infected, which accounts for over 3% of the island, which is pretty significant.
How many people died from it?
83. Nearly 100 people died, and that is an outsized population of that was children.
Yeah,
so,
I was going to say, how many children died from it?
And that 83% over 83 people, over 50% of the people who died in that community were children. From the New York Times.
And how could that have been prevented?
I don't know, man. Have you ever thought about
hydroxychloroquine?
No. Have you ever thought about ayahuasca? Fucking idiot.
Bleach.
From the New York Times, though, from the beginning. This woman by the name of Nu Lumeko, her baby daughter radiated with happiness. She clapped and danced to the songs of praise at church. Often Miss Lumeko would roll a coconut across the floor of their home to hear her giggle. Whenever I'm having a bad day, she said, she would have that smile and it would cheer me up, Miss Lumeko would say. Late last month, that joy turned into despair. The baby girl, Lamina, called Mina for short, contracted measles as a calamitous epidemic swept across the Pacific Island nation. Days later, just 10 months old, she dies in her mom's arms. I don't really accept it, she said. Miss Lumeko said, God, why? Why my baby? You might ask the question, why did this happen? And, I'm a Lord of the Rings head. So Wormtongue comes around the corner, RFK, and he's creeping around and he whispers into the prime minister's ear, don't vaccinate the kids. It'll give them measles, right? Like he writes,
give them autism.
He writes a note to the PM of Samoa saying something to the effect of, it wasn't measles. Your kid died of asthma or something like that. It was actually what gave her measles was the measles vaccination. Even though that kid had never been vaccinated. So in 2018, 2 babies died after receiving the measles vaccination. In 2019, 2 nurses were sentenced to jail for 5 years of manslaughter after incorrectly mixing and administering the vaccinations. So it wasn't...
So giving the wrong...
Right. So this was a clerical error, a devastating clerical error to 2 families that started this entire fucking...
Did they send them to El Salvador?
No.
That's a different clerical error.
They sent him to Australia, the original penal colony. The deaths triggered a suspension of MRR vaccinations in Samoa. 2 children died. Remember this. Which, by the way, 2 children who shouldn't have died, but it was done to a clerical error. But folks who are part of the anti-vax movement pushed the PM of Samoa to suspend through the Australian College these vaccinations. In late 2019, with measles vaccinations hovering around 30%, any what they call developed nations should be sitting around 87.
Shithole countries?
Shithole countries, these people. Before 2019, though, they were hovering around 80. So this is a massive drop.
Crazy.
Massive drop.
And we have a fucking Kennedy coming in here?
Oh, yeah. If you're listening to that whole thing that we were just talking about, that uptick of anti-vax, the lessening of the vaccination is down to misinformation that's pushed by the RFK's organization.
Who's not a medical doctor.
At all.
And is questionably a lawyer, too.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm going to flash forward the story a little bit. Dildo Baggins finds himself on the ticket running as president. The whole time he's pushing that he's the health candidate, right? He ends up dropping out because literally no one wants to hear that voice for 4 years. I don't give a shit how good he is at politics. I would never vote for that voice. And I know he didn't cause anything to cause the spasmodic dysphoria that he has. But it should be known that the disorder is found through a study to have 65% of those folks who have the disorder had measles. So RFK.
Dun-dun-dun.
Yeah, he has something that is found to be by, the studies to be caused by measles. He finds himself now at the center of a health crisis in Western Texas, dealing with a health crisis, much like that was happening on the island nation of Samoa, where there are children dying unnecessarily.
How many children?
Of that 84 number, over 50% of the deaths were children under the age of 12.
Bad.
Very bad.
Bad optics.
Very, very bad. And now you have the specter of death running the Health and Human Services saying, oh, wait a minute, we shouldn't be doing it at all, or we need to be having better science, I think is what the things he said here recently.
The Phil Spector?
Yeah. Texas is currently dealing with a measles outbreak that has spread to 23 of its counties, right? And by the way, I think like Texas, if I remember correctly, has like something like 128 counties, and most of them have less than 2,000 people living in them. So it's like the city centers are where most people live. But one of the things that I found incredibly curious about this is just how much attention RFK is paying attention to these small little counties where these measles outbreaks are happening. Currently, the largest demographic of people being infected with measles in the United States are children under the age of 18, accounting for 381 of the 561 cases. So over half of the cases that are happening in Texas right now are people who are under the age of 18. One of the specific case I wanted to focus on for today's conversation is one by the name of the Daisy Hillebrand case. She's an 8-year-old girl. Well, she was an 8-year-old girl from Lubbock County, Texas. Daisy died from measles. But if you listen to the anti-vax crowd in Texas, she died from sepsis due to a tonsil infection. And that rumor got spread by an anti-vax lunatic that the New York Times called a COVID misinformation star. He tweeted out, quote, "Breaking news, another child dies a tragic death after recovering from measles." And more from the Texas Tribune. The Virginia doctor directed his 1.3 million followers to a 930-word Substack essay where he accuses the University Medical Center of Lubbock of mismanaging Daisy's case and purports that she died not from measles but from sepsis after having fallen ill to mononucleosis and tonsillitis.
Mono.
Yeah.
The kissing disease.
She had already recovered from measles, according to her father, Daisy's father. More importantly, the revelation circumvented the wishes of the people who were most important in this case, Daisy's family. Peter Hillebrand, Daisy's father, told the Texas Tribune on Tuesday he did not know how his daughter's death information was made public. I've never even heard the name before, referring to Malone. So that Malone was the guy who was talking about her dying from sepsis and all this other bullshit. I've never heard of him before. So he's the reason I'm sitting here there at my daughter's funeral, having to fight media off at the church. So the media shows up at his daughter's funeral that he wanted to keep private. So not only did he lose his daughter to measles, by the way, he did not get her vaccinated. That's kind of his fault.
We're not here to place blame.
I am.
Well,
I am absolutely here to place
let's also
blame.
remember that he
Everybody has a choice.
we violated his deceased daughter's HIPAA privacy as well.
We didn't.
No, well, we you're right. We sitting here, the collective we didn't, but they did. He said he didn't know how his daughter's death information was made public. That's incredibly
intrusive and terrible.
Yeah,
absolutely
terribly intrusive. But if you decided to not vaccinate your daughter, you murdered your kid. You piece of shit.
Can we separate? Are we going to blame the people of Samoa as well?
Yeah,
they were influenced. They were told not to do it.
Yes. You fell for a lie. It's your fault.
Let's recall an earlier conversation. This is why misinformation destroys families.
Yeah,
sure.
Didn't we say that misinformation destroys families? Here you have it, in play.
Let's stop calling things misinformation. It's a lie. You lied.
And lying to the people, but people are vulnerable and they're going to pick up what you put down. And
why? Because they want to believe it.
So I think that we could frame it in the sense of that you have somebody from the United States when you're going into a developing country that's saying like, hey, these measles vaccines are suspect, don't do them. And so you're getting this information from somebody that's
It's an abuse of power.
It's an abuse of power. Exactly.
You're put in a position of power because you're supposed to be trusted to be able to keep people safe, especially as the fucking, what is his title? What's his official title?
He's the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
He's the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
He ran the organization.
He is the Secretary of Health and Human Services for the country.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this
He is
question.
responsible for public health in the country.
Right.
And by spreading misinformation, he is deliberately being harmful.
Yes.
Because
so
he's
he is to
abusing
blame.
his power.
As much as the father is to blame. If he had injected his daughter
We're going to blame... No. Let me be clear. We're going to blame him first before we blame the father.
No, let's blame the father the same way I would blame him if he had injected his wife and himself with bleach during COVID-19.
People's choice, whether or not to
I
vaccinate
blame
their
him.
kids, is a personal choice. And you need to be mindful of that when weighing in on someone else's personal
If
choices
you
because this
decided-
applies across the board.
Sure, but if you just said, oh, yeah, well, this is what the president's saying, I'm going to inject myself with bleach, you're a fucking idiot. You deserve to die. Like, I'm not, like, I don't hold any sympathy for you for grieving your own daughter's death that you caused because you refused to vaccinate her. That's not my fault or your fault or our fault as a society. That is you as a personal feeling as an adult man, an adult father who thought to himself, what's better than vaccinating my kid? Letting her die from measles. Fuck you. You deserve to die. You deserve the grief.
This is why we don't defund science.
No, I agree with you. I think we're on the same page here. What I'm saying is let's not blame the father here. He deserves as much blame as RFK does. How does he not deserve any blame here?
I would say
Those are two different questions, but go ahead.
In the sense of when you have somebody who does not have the ability, or maybe it's resistance to being able to check the facts and see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense,
right?
And access to that, and then you have somebody that has access to Facebook, to Instagram, to TikTok, where you hear people that are in charge of the government that are saying like, hey, don't vax your kid because this is what's going on, that you can really...
But do your own research, bro. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that their
How
whole thing?
can you know what sources
But isn't
to trust?
that their thing, though? Is like, if the right is like the whole thing that they did all COVID long was, well, do your research. You'll find out that it's not real. Then fuck off. Your kid deserved to die.
No,
I'm sorry.
Nobody deserves to die.
No. If you're like, oh, you know what, we don't need to have like gun regulations in this country, and your kid gets shot up and you voted against it, I'm really sorry. I don't feel sorry for you.
What you're speaking to, I'm going to support you here and say that what you're speaking to is the inevitability.
She's such a good, whatever she does is her profession.
The inevitability of
Reframing
natural
101.
consequences.
Yeah,
You're speaking to
decided
the
do
inevitability
it.
of natural
Put your
consequences.
fucking hand on a hot frying pan, you get burned. I'm sorry, that's your fault.
And what I'm hearing is that you don't have a lot of sympathy or maybe even empathy.
Help me to understand.
Help me to better understand. Help me to better understand though how you can sooner blame the consumer instead of the puppeteer.
Okay,
you
so
know
let
what I
me
mean?
say this. Like, all right, so you and I we're all three of us are exposed to the same amount of propaganda, right?
But we have different levels of education.
Remember our
and
privilege,
opportunity
right?
and
Remember
privilege.
our privilege.
Okay, so if you decided that as a non-college educated individual or a college educated individual to buy into the idea that vaccinations are going to give your kid autism, and because you don't want your kid to have autism, you're going to make sure that they're at a higher propensity of contracting some kind of preventable disease, you are at fault.
There are whole communities to perpetuate misinformation.
You are at fault.
But so I guess the question to push back on that is, what about the communities that have been exploited by it, like
Sure.
African American, Latino that have been purposely
educate yourself. You say it at the end of every episode. Educate yourself. Like that. I cannot do all the work for you.
Should one start with Wikipedia, or where would you recommend beginning?
Go to the CDC. Go to a fucking
the CDC that's been stripped of all of its important information.
It's run by the man.
There are so many sources
but you
out
get
there.
the fucking struggle, right?
No, I don't.
Really?
No, I don't. You decided that you wanted your kid.
They're defunding libraries.
Before any of this happened, right? The guy who decided to, his daughter is 8 years old, right? Died.
You're shoulding. You're shoulding.
I am shoulding.
You're
You're right, I
shoulding,
am.
and don't shit all over yourself.
I'm gonna shit all over him.
The reality is we're here, And as they take money away from schools and libraries,
would it make it any different for you that he still, after his kid's dead from something that he could have prevented, doesn't think he did anything wrong?
I would chalk that up to that's a grieving parent who's not ready to accept accountability for their lack of correct information.
Yeah.
And we need to honor that person's grief until they're ready to kind of come to the mirror and see what happened.
I
can't imagine. I
appreciate-
can't imagine the pain of losing a child.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that angle of like, hey, look, none of us can understand what that looks like in this.
No, we can't.
But to be fair, if you were to say to me, if I said to you, we've got a kid and we're not going to put a bike helmet on that kid. We're just going to let that fucking kid go down the street, down this long street, who's got a hill at the bottom of it, and it's got a ramp at the bottom of it. And if that kid decides it is going to, by hook or by crook, go across that ramp, and it's going to fucking crack its head on the fucking concrete, that's our fault. Is it not?
I don't know, because
you have all the literature in the world that bike helmets save fucking people's brains. You know that. You were actively working against it. How is that not the same thing?
So I will put it to you like this. It just my experience in working in Guatemala and the availability of education
But we're talking about Texas. We're not talking about Guatemala here. Like, you chose, like, like, if you ride a motorcycle without a helmet and you get into a car accident, your wig is getting split. That's on you.
But you also think about, like, I have to spend an extra $200 for this.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The MMR vaccine is given for free at hospitals, so it's not a cost thing.
All right, so apples and oranges, bike helmets and vaccines, okay?
They save lives.
We
Both
are
of them do the same thing.
hacking Greg right now, and this is all going to be on our paid Patreon.
No, they're getting this for free. It's not an attack. I know it's not an attack. I'm giving, like, why are they not why is the fathers, you are grieving your child's death.
I think
before you grieve your child's death, you could have prevented it.
But I think that's inherently known. I think that a parent who loses a child to a preventable disease because there is a vaccine available inherently knows that they made a poor choice. Or they're at least going to question. And
I think you're wrong. I think these people are fully baked in. I think that they're fucking twisted.
Well, okay, baked in is a separate issue, though. Like, because we're talking about a cult. And so at the end of the day, we have to consider the vulnerability of the population on the receiving end of this bullshit. Sure. And it is very vulnerable, easy to take advantage of people.
Yeah, but then, like, how much grace do you give to people who are like, yeah, we're okay with thousands of people dying every single day in Yemen and in Gaza?
Like, I don't think the question is about grace.
You stretch this across it.
It's not about grace.
But no. I also think that you're really minimizing the amount of influence that the United States has.
Sure. But I want to maximize the influence that, like, vaccination programs have had for a really long time of saying, like, no, this is a good thing. You should keep doing it.
But you're presuming that people have had the same availability. What I'm going to say to you is I'm really glad that you grew up in a place where this information was made available to the people that took care of you.
I can almost guarantee you my parents didn't think twice about the vaccination process because people, even my parents aren't like they're not doctors. You know what I mean? Like they're not like
they're not.
Yeah, looking at me, you'd think I come from doctor stock, but like
my parents also didn't think twice about the vaccine, and we've kind of we've talked about this already. Lucky for us, we didn't have to think twice about it, but there are other things that we would encourage people to think twice about before, like doing. So vaccines are on that list.
I'm not saying like everyone should like a zombie walk into a situation where they're just like, oh yeah, just give me this, and give me this. But like at the same time, measles is a preventable disease that is proven itself. If you contract measles, you have a 90% chance of dying. And you decided to roll the dice on your child's life.
For kids, right?
Yeah, for kids. And you decided to roll the dice on your child's life because you're anti-vax. That's your fault. I'm really sorry your kid's dead. But you chose this. You made the decision for your kid to not get vaccinated, and I'm really sorry that they're dead. You decided that, though.
But I guess the pushback.
Whose fault is it?
But the pushback I would have with that is we have a lot of people that are easily influenced with political entities.
Sure.
That are going to be skeptical, unless they're.
I'm a skeptic too, but not of like proven things.
But you also have the privilege of having higher education.
Yeah, but like you don't need a higher education to do a simple Google search of what does a government or like not even a government organization, but an organization outside of the government say about these vaccinations. You decided like this is how like QAnon starts. Like this is like I don't know. I see both your points. I'm not saying like I think you're wrong. I think that
we're not disagreeing. I think with what you're saying, except for like dying
the kid
children,
dying.
what,
Yeah, but
and
like,
what they deserve.
like if your kid is like, I'm really sorry that she's dead. You deserve the grief that you're going through because you decided that you didn't think that.
What if we
like,
just stopped at I'm really sorry
No.
that your kid is dead?
No, it's like people who like vote against gun regulation, who kids get shot up in a school. You could have prevented it. You had a choice. Anyway, let's get back to the story.
No, I think we're having a really good discussion right now.
No, I think it's a great discussion. I don't like I don't take offense to anything that's being said, and I hope you guys don't either. I
no, not at all.
I'm firmly in the camp of like at a certain point you are actively
Personal responsibility.
You are actively choosing to ignore the science.
Well-
You're actively choosing to.
But what about the families? So I guess this is the thing that I struggle with when it comes to working with populations that have less access to information and feed a lot of their information through Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, is that we have to be able to counteract that.
How do we do it though? How do
in
you
the schools?
Yeah, but like, okay, so let's just say like, all right, you only, is it, how do I word this? Is it not your responsibility to look outside of Facebook, Instagram, and social media for your news?
When you say responsibility, what is your expectation of this population of people that we're speaking about?
For them to be...
Or just any population, because there's a lot of populations that it's not just an immigrant or poor population that looks for social media.
Let me ask you a question. What are the reliable news sources that you can trust right now?
AP.
Can you list them for us?
Yeah, I would go to the AP.
NPR.
NPR, PBS.
Okay.
I would go to...
Al Jazeera.
Maybe not Al Jazeera, but I would go to like the
But
Intercept.
they're Muslim. They're too Muslim.
I would go to the Intercept. I'd go to the Conversation. I would go to communisttoday.com. Kidding. But I would go to ProPublica, like for my reporting.
I'm going to encourage you.
TMZ.
I'm going to encourage you
If
to
I
make...
went onto fucking Facebook for my news,
Hey.
I would find nothing.
No, make a comprehensive list of trusted news sources and begin the efforts to put that out there to your listeners.
I do. If you check our Blue Sky, and I've invited all of you to.
Bitches.
Is this a commercial for your Blue Sky?
Blue Sky account. But
It's
no,
the
like,
best. It's the greatest.
But what I heard you say was that if people are going to Facebook, like fuck them, basically. Like,
no.
You get
It's
what
not
you pay
fuck
for.
them. It's not fuck them, but you are like if you show up to a carnival and you get a carnival ride, that's like
Well, not everyone is using that for carnival purposes. I mean, like as you know, one of my more trusted sources of information is Heather Richardson Cox. Is
Right.
that her name? I always mix up the Heather Cox Richardson.
Sure.
Okay, I think that's it. Either way, she's a Harvard professor who writes these daily letters about what the hell is going on in our nation, and it's really well organized and it's very factual. And she cites her sources and all that jazz. But I find her through her Facebook page. She's on Instagram too. She's probably on like Threads and
like
Blue Sky and
is
all
she,
the things.
I was gonna say, is she not somewhere else? Like where you don't have-
She is. I just happened to like,
That's where you found it.
That's where I found it,
Sure.
and that's it's the easiest access point because now Facebook has my number and they know that I'm only interested in hearing what she has to say. So
Sure.
I see that, and I see other people who share similar ideologies to what she's putting out there, and it's a very custom tailored feed kind of thing. But I think that the assumption that people understand and know what reliable news sources is probably a little bit tricky.
I don't disagree with you in that some people might be confused, but I do think that like if you log on to Facebook and you go, I'm going to get my news today.
Well, I think if you're hoping to find anything real or factual, it's probably going to target you in that way too, and it's going to show you everything that isn't factual.
Right.
The reality is the internet is way smarter than we are right now. It's 2 steps ahead of
The
us.
algorithms are doing their thing.
They
the
really,
algorithms are doing
they
algorithming.
really are.
Yeah.
Algorithms be algorithming, and I'm telling you what, like it can start to distort your perception of reality after a while, and so people find themselves in these click holes, in these rabbit holes of like information loops, and it's no wonder that people are fucking confused.
Yeah.
You know, so I think you have to factor that in there, that like it's not that people don't want to be informed, it's that they aren't sure who to trust anymore in terms of where to get their information and what's real and what's not.
Let's get back to our story though. Like I know that we've done a little bit of a jag there, and I think these are good conversations to continue to have. I don't think that like my solution is the only solution, and I don't think that it's a one size fit all kind of thing. I guess I'm always curious, right? Like, and I think that if more people were curious about like, all right, what does this actually mean? Like,
or just hearing from the other side and just being able to see like, hey, why does this mean what it means for you?
Yeah.
And why?
And I think that's like, I'm always curious about the why. Like, why do you think the way that you think? Why do I think the way that I think? Am I brainwashed? And I always come from that perspective. But, you know, I think when maybe this is my own thing, and maybe this is something I need to work through on myself and my end. But like when I see if we start at point A and point D is someone dying, like I have to think, well, what happened in between? And like, am I responsible for what happened in between, or is this like a natural reflection of like just the way that life plays out? And I think that the cruel, like cold reality is like people who are in places to make these decisions for young people who don't really understand what MMR means or any of this stuff are making decisions based off of people like RFK. And so like that's me trying to tie it back to the story here, but you know, on the day
that's almost like eugenics though, right? Like if these dumb people can't figure it out, well then let's kill them off.
No. I'm not saying that. My point is if you
9
my point is I feel like you have to be almost in a position of blissfully ignorant, right? Like you have to be ignorant, like purposefully to know that like, yes, I got vaccinated when I was a kid and I've never gotten the measles. So like
I'm alive.
Right. And so
I don't have polio.
Right. I don't have polio. Polio is coming back, by the way. Like it's like
hell yeah.
We're talking about like things
that's not a hell yeah.
Shout out polio.
Shout out to polio. Like things that we got rid of. Like in
smallpox
in the 20th century. Like we're talking about the time of like
don't call it a comeback.
Seriously.
I'd like to bring up a point.
Bring up the point.
Okay, so
point us.
This whole like people should know better thing.
No. It's not about people should know better.
Well,
it's about like stop looking at one source of news as your only source of news. And if you choose to do that and you continue to follow that, that is your fault.
I agree.
I hear that.
But there's an element that you're kind of discounting, and that's that people, I think,
are stupid.
Well, you know, stupidity goes into its own category. And then there's this whole like reasonable doubt thing where like you don't think that things will happen to you, and you're even in denial while they're happening to you.
Isn't that a luxury?
I want to bring up a fire that occurred on the evening of February 20th, 2003 at the Station, which is a nightclub and a music venue, and it's in West Warwick, Rhode Island. It killed 100 people and injured 230 people. It was during a concert for a rock band called Great White. And what happened was a pyrotechnic display
the Whites
that ignited flammable acoustic foam into the walls and ceilings. And in the first very critical 30 seconds of that fire, people thought oh, this is part of the show. And that is why so many people died that night. And then they also started to panic. And in a matter of 2 minutes and about 30 seconds, the entire building went up in flames. And the reality is people remembered only the entrance that they came in as far as exits and didn't even think because they were in their limbic brains and not in their like thinking brains.
Oh God, can you, God.
We're talking about brains now. So they're in their limbic brains, and then so first of all, they don't see all the points of exit.
So Judy, can I just interrupt you really quickly?
You can.
Can you please just break it down just a little bit more for people that don't know what the limbic brain is?
So the limbic brain can also be known as the animal brain, and that's when we are very reactive and responsive, but not so much thinking critically and or with any logic. So in an ideal space, you're just reacting. And in an ideal space, we bring that prefrontal cortex, the most developed part of the brain, online, and we're able to use logic and reason to figure things out. And I think that when we're in that reactive limbic part of the brain, it's more fight or flight. And that's why, like, stupid people will die. That's why...
or if you're under, like, 26 or 28, right? Like when it's not
fully developed
or formed, that you might not make those
you might not
decisions.
make sound decisions. And that's, to relate it back to this father, I'm not saying that he was reacting in his limbic brain or that he didn't have proper information. We don't actually know the full story of what happened. But what I can say is that a lot of people subscribe to the belief that it's not real and it won't happen to me until it's happening to me, and even still I might deny that it's happening to me.
Sure.
So that's the only point. That's what I wanted to bring kind of into the space, just with regards to that.
So just to volley the ball back across the court here. So the limbic brain, the whole fight or flight experience, right? Like I've got my own experiences with all that. Like I understand what that. I understand what you're saying. This man who decided to not vaccinate his child was not operating from a space of fight or flight. He was operating from a space of, I don't believe what the government is telling me. It is his fault his kid's dead. To me, I don't see how there is I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand why there is a difference of opinion here. Because he killed his kid by not vaccinating her.
He subscribed to some sort of belief where he thought measles would never ever happen here in West Texas and to my kid.
Well, that's a great point.
That's unfortunate because your kid's dead now, and that's your fault for not vaccinating her because she doesn't have her own agency.
And I think one of the things that's just really, really sad in all of it is that we have a child who is not alive, and we have a parents that have to live with that.
That's a great point, because on the day that Daisy was buried, RFK made an emergency unannounced trip to Gaines County, Texas, where Daisy's funeral was happening. This is from an ex-post here. In Gaines County, Kennedy raised doubts about the safety of the vaccine, telling Daisy's father, "You don't know what's in the vaccines anymore." On the day of Daisy's funeral, the Spectre of Death posted on X a picture of himself with the members of the Mennonite community, along with Edwards and Odessa doctor Richard Bartlett, writing that both physicians had treated and healed Mennonite children before with some kind of medication. Neither method...
Come on, don't fucking gloss over it.
I can't
say
pronounce
it.
I don't even know these words.
They're big words.
Budesonide, and clarithromycin.
Chlamydia, they say. They say ricin. I said ricin.
Neither method has been scientifically proven to successfully treat measles, kind of like he did in Samoa. The CDC has said the spread of measles is probably being underreported. And through new messaging from the federal government around COVID. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this post yet, or this website from the whitehouse.gov, where it's lableak.gov, where they go through the true origins of COVID-19.
It's a China virus.
COVID-19.
My
and it's
God.
got Donald, I'm a cuck Trump in the middle between lab and leak.
He's not a cuck. He is an alpha.
Is the biggest alpha they've ever had. And the White House has never had a bigger alpha since, I don't know, maybe George Washington, they say.
Oh my God, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative That COVID-19 originated naturally. I cannot.
So-
This is the White House page.
This is
the
this
official
is the
page of the
whitehouse.gov.
fucking White
So
House.
they have
Wuhan.
really
Got you all in check. Wuhan.
They've got these excellent graphics on the picture on the web page. They have a timeline that you can go through. They have a picture of Dr. Fauci with his head on his hand resting on his forehead after Trump said you can put bleach into your fucking blood. There's a picture of Fauci pardons. So there is a whole. Oh, by the way, here we are. It's a Forbes. This is a Forbes News, not Forbes.com, but Forbes News.
What's the difference?
One's a right-wing fucking peddler of propaganda. One's not. So, yeah, be careful what you click on. But basically, what I kind of wanted to crystallize through this episode was we're talking about disinformation, misinformation, lies, propaganda.
You've also just crystallized that people truly cannot trust their news sources because
they're
even
stupid.
The fucking White House page is riddled with propaganda and misinformation right now.
Yeah.
And I think
credible news sources such as the CDC and NIH have probably been stripped clean of anything credible.
Sure.
So you can't fully fucking blame people for being misinformed, right?
8 years ago, I can though. You decided to not vaccinate your kid 8 years ago.
That's a fair point, and we can separate this one case where I still very much disagree with how the funeral.
Trump.
What the funeral
Still-
was being used as propaganda as well.
Yeah.
And exploiting people in their time of need is also something that this regime is currently guilty of, multiple times over.
Yeah.
Okay, which is really
Agreed.
fucking disgusting. But you can't question why people are confused about where they're getting their information right now, right?
Sure. I want to finish with this clip.
It's one thing to say the measles vaccine is the best way of preventing spread, but it's another thing to then say, and therefore, we suggest that you get the measles vaccine.
We encourage people to get the measles vaccine.
Okay, so I think that's actually the next step, and that's news as far as I'm concerned, that you're saying that. What's the position philosophically of the federal government in terms of public health?
The federal government's position, my position is people should get the measles vaccine, but the government should not be mandating.
Understand,
No,
but
I've always said during my campaign and every public statement I've made, I'm not going to take people's vaccines away from them. What I'm going to do is make sure that we have good science so that people can make an informed choice.
Shut the fuck up, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you fucking non-doctor who doesn't know shit about shit and that is preaching all this shit that has caused people to get killed. What I believe is that the U.S. has a ton of influence around the world, and when you have people within an administration that is doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying, people are going to believe it. And so, yes, what we've talked about with the father in America Samoa should have done his research, but when you're or Texas, that you have people that are going to believe this shit, and they're going to go for it and not do it, and there's going to be dire consequences.
Yeah. Judy, how about you hit us with your final thoughts? I mean, do you believe what RFK just said there? Do you think that he actually thinks that people should get vaccinated? Do you think that what happened in Samoa and is happening in Texas isn't a model for what's going to happen here pretty soon in our country? What are your final thoughts around his stance on autism? What do you think about who RFK is, what he's trying to do, what he's looking to do maybe? We can't say for sure what he's trying to do, but we can glean, I think. What do you think?
You just asked me a lot of questions.
It's a lot of questions.
I think he's a fucking village idiot, and I don't understand how he's in the position that he's in. First and foremost,
Because he's a fucking Kennedy.
well, he's a dangerous.
Kingdom.
He is a dangerous human. I don't think we should listen to a word he says. I think that people should absolutely, go see their doctor and get regular blood work done and read credible news sources to get information about how they should care for their health. And I think
hold on. What is a credible news source for you then?
The CDC comes to mind. I mean, absolutely. I mean, what's left of it? Any of the well, honestly, government-run healthcare sites are probably not very credible at this point. So I'm going to let you do the good work of putting credible news sources in the links for the show.
Pulling up,
absolutely,
website.
he is. He's cheating as we speak. But you asked about my final thoughts, and my final thoughts are, I'm in agreement with all of the things that we talked about today, and I enjoyed the passionate discussion around the continued efforts to defend human rights, and that's really what we're here to do, and every single word of what we've said today is true about the importance of continuing to not spread misinformation, to in fact spread real information and things that are going to arm people with ways to kind of prolong their life and live as well as they can given the constraints within their jurisdictions where they reside. And the reality is that certain groups are going to struggle more than others. And we need to take care of those very vulnerable groups because they are at risk for more information or to be
taken advantage of.
Misappropriately applied.
Yeah. They're vulnerable groups for a reason, and we have to help lift them up to where our privilege allows us to be, which is in an educated space. And I think that's the least that we can do to help to equalize and to treat all human beings as though they have the right to due process, and they have the right to proper health care and access to healthy food and
correct information.
And correct information.
Yeah, I think that's correct information. I think to both of your points earlier, like what does correct information actually look like? I think that can take many shapes. The one thing that when we look back at this episode, and we've talked a lot of, we've gone on for a bit here, and we've talked about a lot of really heavy stuff.
We yelled at you a lot.
It's no. I don't take it as yelling. I think
you deserve it.
I think productive conversation, right? Like testing, like pushing me to like crystallize what I think even further, and this is going to send me back to think about this. Like our conversation, I'm going to go back and I'm going to think about like what do I actually think about this? Like what do I actually mean when I say what I'm saying, and what does that look like, and whether or not I shift on one thing or another thing, or maybe it grounds me even further in what I'm thinking in terms of like, hey, look, you brought this upon yourself. You brought this upon your own home. That doesn't mean he doesn't deserve empathy, but it does like because his kid's dead, but you kind of set the trap. And maybe I'll go back and I'll think about that a little bit more, and maybe I'll change my opinion. And I reserve the right to do that, and I also reserve the right to maybe even dig in a little bit even further there. But what I want to leave this episode at least with from my end is we have a government who is practicing in its rawest form eugenics. We're talking about people who are thriving with autism, who are struggling with autism, who are living regular everyday lives with autism. This organization, the Human Health and Services Organization, would love to see them not be disenfranchised. From the president down, they would love to see that happen. They would love to see vaccinations be done at a local level where there is no controlling arm to what's happening in our country, where you have parts of Western Texas that are being inundated with children dying because of measles, a preventable disease, a preventable a vaccination that can handle all of these things, that all three of us in this room right now don't have and never have had measles because of that thing. And we have decided as a community of people in this country to decide that we're going to start questioning whether the earth is flat, whether the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination actually works. I cannot say it enough. If the world stopped rotating, you'd fly off the fucking thing. If everyone stopped taking MMR, everyone would end up with measles. It's very simple. It's very clear to me, at least. spread the truth, not measles, folks. Listeners, thank you for enjoying another episode of At the Extremes. Do subscribe and share. It goes a long way. You can reach out to us on Blue Sky. Again, we are going to be doing this Indivisible protest down in Baltimore City. So if you are interested in joining us, reach out to us on Blue Sky. We are going to be there, and we would love to meet with you, spread the word. Again, our community is growing, and we want you to be a part of it. And a part of what fighting fascism is putting a little bit of skin in the game.
Absolutely.
You can't post your way through fascism. You can't talk your way through fascism. We are a community of people. The only way fascism dies is when it's brought to the fucking table. And we can't do that unless we're at the table, folks. So, do subscribe and share. It goes a long way. Reach out to us on Blue Sky. I already mentioned that. Check the show notes. Till next week.
Educate yourself.
Maybe Jesus would bomb the Afghans on some kind of vengeful whim. Maybe Jesus would drive an M1 tank and he would shoot Saddam.